we'll take a look back and reflect with a guy who I think is pretty straightforward and gives you very genuine opinions. Derrick Gunn from Comcast Sportsnet, Philadelphia, a long time around this Eagles football team. As Derrick, we've come to the end of another Eagles season. I think as a week has now gone by and Howie has talked and we're getting ready for the playoffs, we start to reflect back, and I think it gives us not that knee-jerk reaction sometimes. We can kind of settle in. And you look back at this 7-9 team and last year's 7-9 team. You're around this team, you're around last year's team, you're around all these teams. Do you have a better feel about the direction of this 7-9 bunch as opposed to last year's team that finished with the exact same record?
Well, I would say from the quarterback perspective, absolutely. This team was in a dire straits. Look at how many quarterbacks they had gone through since Donovan McNabb left here. And nobody thought that Howie Roseman could wheel and deal and work his way up the draft board last offseason and somehow find a way to get to that number 2 slot, and he did, and he gets a kid like Carson Wentz, who has unbelievable potential. They changed the complexion of the organization. Things bottomed out with Chip Kelly. They wanted to bring in someone who could win the players over, who was, organization-friendly with people in the front office, and Doug Peterson was their perfect choice for that, since he had a history here in Philadelphia, knew a lot of the people within the structure of what goes on over there. And you thought they made some good moves in terms of you got yourself a solid right tackle in Brandon Brooks. You got yourself one of the better free agent safeties that were on the market in Rodney McLeod. And then Jim Schwartz brought in a couple of his pieces from Buffalo. But in terms of overall, do I feel better about this team than the team of 2015? I can't honestly say that. I like the quarterback, but they still have a lot of work to do if they're going to get on the same page and get on the same level with a lot of the teams that we're going to be watching this weekend and next weekend in the playoffs.
Derrick Gunn with us. Derrick, Howie Roseman sat up there and said, as I sit up here, I'm excited about the future of this franchise, but there's a lot of work to do. How much work, in your opinion? Is it years of work and off-season of work? How far away do you think the Eagles really feel they are?
Well, I think they're at least a couple of years away. They're going to delete some interesting pieces this offseason. Players like, Dorial Green-Beckham, I don't think he's coming back. Michael Kendricks, Kelsey, Leotis McKelvin, players like that. I don't think they're coming back, but they're so cash-strapped right now. It'll be interesting to see what or if Howie can do to delete some other components to free up more money to try to go after some of the people he may be interested in that could be free in the open market this year. But even with that said, as you see it right now, you have 20-something other teams that have more cap space than the Eagles right now. So he's competing against guys and teams that are going to be letting go of more players, so they're going to have even more money to play with compared to the Eagles. So they're not going to be able to corner the market in free agency the way we've seen them do. And they have to do a better job of drafting, a better consistent job of drafting, but not just a first-round pick. You look at a lot of successful teams, it's those rounds 2 through 5 where you build the core of your team. And the Eagles have been so inconsistent in that manner. So it's a lot of things that go into building a quality championship team. And, don't be surprised if the Eagles are another 7-9 team in 2017 because they have to tear it down a little bit more to try to build it up for the long term.
Now, you talked about they had to do better in the mid-rounds of the draft. Well, many fans and onlookers look at how close they were in a lot of those key games, a play here, an injury there, the Lane Johnson suspension. Do you think the Eagles are clouded by that, or do they actually understand that they need that much more talent?
I would hope it would be the latter because I don't care if you lose 16 games by 1 point every game. The bottom line is you lost 16 games. And if you don't learn how to overcome those deficiencies, you continue to repeat them, and that's what happened with this Eagles team. So I think, they just have to get better personnel. They're going to have to add some more depth. And I don't think they're going to be able to get everything that they want in just one offseason. No team does. If you're a team that's rebuilding, you don't get everything you want in one offseason. So if they can continue to build on the foundation they established last year, getting a franchise quarterback, getting the safety, shoring up the offensive line, and continue to build upon that this year, then they're going in the right direction. And obviously, we won't know if the proof is in the pudding until we see the product they put on the field next fall. That'll be the final determination of whether it's getting better or it's exactly the same, or if it's worse for that matter. Hopefully not. So I just think as we look at this offseason and as we look at them delete and add and move forward, we'll have a good telling tale sign of what we're looking at in May, but we won't see how it functions until September through December of next season.
Derrick Gunn's with us, Comcast Sportsnet Philadelphia. So a lot of that sets up this question in that Howie came out the other day and really said, hey, one of our biggest acquisitions was off the field, Joe Douglas, Gunner. And do you take Howie at his word when he says that Joe will set up the draft board, he'll run the draft room? And if that is the case, do we feel a lot better about the direction of this offseason?
Yeah, I would hope so at this point, because Joe is highly respected in terms of being a scout and a talent evaluator. So if Howie says he's going to let Joe set the board and go on Joe's recommendations, don't forget you still have Tom Donahoe there, who did a lot of good things when he was with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So if you let those two set your board and you feed off of them, I feel pretty good about it. And when Howie was asked, well, who has the final say in terms of what players you're going to pick, Howie said it will be a collaboration. So I do like that in terms of feeling better about they revamped their entire scouting department. They're giving Joe Douglas more of a prominent role now. Tom Donahoe is going to have a bigger voice now. And if that is how it's going to go from here, I feel much better about what the Eagles are going to try to do with the draft this year.
Yeah, Joe Douglas, a guy who is highly regarded around this league. Now, Howie, in your dealings with him, do you feel that this is he's got a very interesting path back to where he's been? Do you feel that he has learned a lot and that he has morphed and changed in terms that he feels like the guy that when he got this job, he was questioned in it, and that he had to prove that I could do the football decisions, and that I can do the draft, and I can do free agency, and I'm more than just a contracts guy, and maybe that held him back. Has he evolved, in your opinion, to a guy that says, you know what, I don't have to do everything to prove to everyone that I deserve this job?
Well, if you look at Howie on the surface, you definitely hear change in his voice. What happened to him and what he had to go through was a very humbling experience for him, and it was embarrassing in a lot of ways for him. He got deleted, and his responsibilities basically were given to a head coach who really didn't have much NFL experience, had no experience in terms of drafting players. And then obviously Jeffrey Lurie gave the role back to him. And when I talked to him after the press conference on Wednesday, I said, in the time that you were basically in the background instead of the forefront, did you go out and did you seek other people, whether they are current or former executives and football people, to pick their brain? He said, absolutely. He said he talked to a number of people to get ideas on how to build a team and what do you look for when you build a team and which way did you go to build a team. And I had never heard Howie say much of that before. So I think it was a wake-up call for Howie in terms of how he was deleted and then resurfaced again and put back into control of this thing. And I'm hoping that it's not just lip service that Howie's giving us. I'm hoping he truly has had a change of heart. He truly understands he needs to bring in people and to rely on people who are smarter than he is in terms of building a team, evaluating talent, and selecting talent at strategic spots to build this roster properly.
And just real quick, I mean, there's still a good role for Howie on this team. It feels like in today's NFL, if you're the GM or whatever his title is, you do need a tree almost, that you can't run free agency, the draft room, be the negotiator, do everything.
No,
it's almost like a coaching staff. You need a head coach and a coordinator, a defensive coordinator, and that's what like the front office seems like now. You can't just have one guy run everything, but Howie does have his strengths and his role that could really help, especially a cap-strapped team.
Yeah, Howie's strength is the money matters, just like Joe Banner's was. In terms of wheeling and dealing and freeing up money and strategically knowing how to financially keep this team afloat. And I think over the overall body of what goes on in the inner structure of that building now is is that you have people working together. When Chip Kelly was there, it was fractured in a lot of ways. But now you have a coach with personnel people, with front office people who are working in unison now. Everybody gets along. Everybody is trying to be on the same page. And that I think was lacking the last couple of years.
Gunner, Howie said 10-6 is not good enough, and a lot of the moves made in the past were made to get to 10-6. Is that saying that he's learned and evolved, or is that just a shot at Chip?
I think he's learned and evolved, because when you look at it, he was Chip was 10-6 in 2014. They didn't get in the playoffs because they had to rely on other people to help them get in the playoffs, and it didn't happen. Yet a team like the Carolina Panthers that year, 7-8-1, won their division and got in the playoffs. And if you look at a 10-win team, since 1978, there have been about 20 10-win teams that didn't get in the playoffs. So a 10-6 record is a good record on the surface, but it's not, in a lot of cases, a record where you control your own destiny. And I understand what Howie's talking about. He wants to get like the New England and teams like that constantly control their own destinies in terms of making the playoffs. And it takes time, because they've been so inconsistent in what they've done for years, and now they're trying to change the course, change the philosophy again. So it's going to take time. And I know the one word people in this region don't want to hear is patience, because that's all they've heard for how many years now, patience, and it still hasn't panned out. It still hasn't gotten them any closer to where they feel they want to see their Philadelphia Eagles be. You know, these people are tired of, as you guys know, they're tired of watching other teams hoist that Lombardi Trophy every February, and they keep wondering, when is it going to be our turn? Are we ever going to have a parade down Broad Street? And I understand that, and I've been here almost 20 years, and I get where they're coming from, but it's going to take time. Since Andy Reid left, look at how the team has gone. Andy Reid left the team when it was on the downside. Chip brought it up in 1 year, and all of a sudden, in the latter part of Chip's second year here, we saw the flaws in it. Other teams caught up to what he was doing. Chip finished 1-3 in his second year here, and a lot of teams caught up to what he was doing, and obviously they knew how to counter it even better his third year, and we saw what happened that third year, where his team was getting blown off the field in a lot of cases. So now you got to reroute, and you've had 1 year under Doug Peterson now. Now, is Doug Peterson the long-term answer? That remains to be seen. I like his aggressiveness. He stayed true to the course in terms of being aggressive. He was the most aggressive fourth down coach in the league this past season, but sometimes that aggressiveness got him in trouble. Sometimes he should have taken a safe route, whether it was a punt or take the 3 points, and he didn't, and it cost his team in situations. And he's made a number of questionable calls, in-game decisions that we sat back and wondered, what the heck was he thinking? Now, will Doug Peterson learn from that and evolve from that? That remains to be seen. Or is Doug Peterson what we see now? Will he continue to be the same? If that's the case, Doug Peterson may not be here for much longer.
Derrick Gunn's with us. Derrick, in the job that you have on game day, you get immediate reaction after wins and losses. You're one of the first guys who gets the chance to talk to these guys. How was morale around these teams this year as opposed to last year? Because it seemed like last year, after games, guys were like, get this season over with. Where this year, it did seem like they were genuinely like, look, we're going somewhere. We know we might not have the talent yet, but did you get a sense that there was a difference in team morale?
A drastic difference. By the latter half of the 2015 season, basically players just wanted to get that season over with. Chip never respected the veteran players. You know what? A good coach knows when to back off on his veterans, when to let them rest, when they need to practice. You don't need to practice the veterans as hard as you do some of the younger guys. Chip thought everybody was the same. He thought he was coaching 53 college guys, and everybody was the same. And a lot of guys balked at that. And a lot of guys, it mentally and physically wore them down. The one thing I can say about this team in 2016 from start to finish is that nobody pointed fingers at anybody. You didn't hear grumbling. There was frustration, obviously, because they started losing more than they won. But they stayed on the same page. They were of one accord, and they really were all about each other, lifting each other up and focusing and trying to be the best that they could be for each other, but it just wasn't good enough in terms of records.
Yeah, and 7-9, 2 straight years. Derrick Gunn is with us here, Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. So moving forward now, they have a lot of questions, but they don't have a lot of cap space. So will this be a challenging offseason to make the necessary strides? Last year, Howie came right out and said, we identified offensive line. Brandon Brooks, Wisniewski, drafted a couple of guys. We felt we needed to do that. They did try to do some wide receiver stuff. Neither of those guys made the team.
And use the word Band-Aid for the corners.
That's right. So this year, are they even going to be able to do what they would like to try to do, or is that going to be challenging?
Well, like I said a little while ago, it all depends on how many pieces of the current situation they feel they need to delete to move in another direction. And if you make a lot of deletions, then you're trying to fill a lot of holes. And you can't do that in free agency. You certainly can't do it with the draft. And you could be right back where we could be sitting here next year at this time talking about another losing record. So that's why I'm interested in seeing how does Howie pull it off this time. You have to give Howie credit for one thing. Nobody thought he could get rid of DeMarco Murray and Byron Maxwell's contracts and Kiko Alonso last offseason. Nobody thought he could move up and get a quarterback, and he was able to do those things. So I'm curious to see how much he has to let go of to try to rebuild this thing, and if he will have enough cap space. I mean, he needs a wide receiver. Some people keep saying he needs one wide receiver. I think he needs a couple of wide receivers. He's going to have to get a running back from somewhere. I still think he needs a little bit more linebacking help. So they need something everywhere. They need two corners possibly if they don't sign Nolan Carroll. And even if they do re-sign Nolan Carroll, you're still going to need depth at cornerback. So they need a lot of components to fix this thing. And I don't see it all happening in one off season. I just hope that they can strategically find enough room in cap space and get enough players to be a competitive entity, just so that we get a better feel that, okay, now we're starting to see the vision in terms of what they're trying to do and continue to add on what they added to in 2016.
Gunner, of course, keeping in mind that hindsight is 2020, but Howie brought back a lot of the core guys that were drafted here, Graham, Curry, Ertz. Were those smart moves by him?
Oh, yeah, I think they were. I thought Brandon Graham was the most consistent defensive lineman this season. I thought Vinny Curry was playing out of place too much. He had him playing at a lot of D tackle. Vinny's forte is coming off the edge. Get Vinny back on the edge. I think you might have to start a Bo Allen 16 games next season if you can't bring Benny Logan back, because they have $100 million guaranteed money, just $100 million guaranteed in the 3 defensive linemen. So you may not be able to bring Benny Logan back, which means Bo Allen's the next man up. Now, Bo Allen's not Benny Logan, but Bo Allen's not a bad football player. He's a decent football player. He made some strategic moves. He said he wanted to build around core players, which is what every team wants to do, build around young core players. It was a costly venture, no question about that. Now you try to build upon it. Where are you going to go from here? How are you going to get your running backs? How are you going to get some wide receivers? Because even if they free up cap space, the only 2 wide receivers really worth looking at on the free agent market, Alshon Jeffrey and Terrell Pryor. Well, I'd be shocked if Cleveland let Pryor go. And even if Chicago let Alshon Jeffrey go, are you going to get in a bidding war for a wide receiver when you need so many different areas to fix on your team? So that's one of many questions that have to be answered. And we're not going to get these answers until like March and April.
I noticed you didn't mention Deshaun Jackson. Are you buying into that chatter at all?
If you bring Deshaun Jackson back, that's fine. But Deshaun Jackson is not the solution to the problem at wide receiver. I think he would be a tremendous help to Jordan Matthews. But let's face it, Deshaun Jackson has never been a great route runner. Can he take the top off of defense? Yes. The guy had only 56 catches this year, but 4,000 yards. He led the NFL at almost 18 yards a catch. So, yes, he would be a great addition. But I still think you need another wide receiver, and you might have to get one in the draft as well. The good teams out there, let's face it, the good teams out there don't have 1 or 2 good wide receivers. They have 3, 4, 5, 6 receivers they can go to. And that's something that this team is not even close to being right now.
Yeah, they're far off there. One spot I think they might have hit, it's ironically enough because Chip was not lauded for his drafting, but Jordan Hicks, and he's a guy that you spoke to many times after games, and he seems to not only be a great player on the field, but a great guy off the field. And I look at him, Gunner, as now maybe the face of that defense. He seems like he really took a big step, specifically in the second half of that season.
No question. Jordan Hicks was a great pick by this organization, and if he could stay healthy, I think Jordan Hicks is going to have an outstanding career in the National Football League. Now you have to determine whether you play him inside or outside. I think Jordan Hicks is better suited to play on the outside. I think he's a little too small to play on the inside. And when we asked Jordan about when they were cleaning out their lockers on Monday, he says, well, the coaches got me in the middle. I'm going to play wherever the coaches have me play. I understand that. He doesn't want to cause any controversy. But I think Jordan Hicks would be better suited to play on the weak side. And he did a phenomenal job in the middle. He's a ball hawk, good cover guy, very smart, heady player, makes many right decisions in terms of calling the line calls. But see, Jordan Hicks is a good foundation to build around. Nigel Bradham was a pretty good football player. He wasn't great, but Nigel Bradham wasn't a bad linebacker as well. Well, now you need another linebacker because obviously they soured on Michael Kendricks for whatever the reason may be. And I'd be shocked if Kendricks is back here in 2017. So now you need another linebacker to complement these guys. So, again, it's just another area where you got to try to shore up and make even more solid than what you had as you move forward.
So, Gunner, in closing then, let's add it all up. You had a rookie coach, you had a rookie QB, you had new systems and schemes and suspensions in the Bradford trade, and you mix that all together. Was 7-9 a success?
To me, 7-9 was a success in terms of getting rid of Chip Kelly, getting a coach that you wanted in here to be a part of where you want to go, getting your franchise quarterback. You added some pieces, as I said, offensive line, safety. So in terms of that, the offseason moves you made, it was a success. In terms of the final record, no. They still have a ways to go.
Derrick Gunn here on the Sports Bash, CSN Philly, Comcast Sportsnet Philadelphia.
Quick slants,
and of course, quick slants coming up, and all throughout
Monday through Friday, 6 o'clock, man.
Right after us, 6 o'clock, and of course, Gunner, I think a pro's pro. You do a great job. That's not an easy job, specifically when the team is not playing well. A lot of times, to have to try to talk to some of these guys in moments where they really probably do not want to be there. But you do a great job handling it, so we do appreciate that.
Real quick before we let them go. Did they flip the side that you stand on, Gunner? Because now you can see the door they come out of. Did they flip the side of the hallway where you stand?
No, they didn't. It's just the angle in which we turn the camera. No, they didn't flip the side.
Okay. Just a little TV question I had to squeeze in there because I don't know when I'm going to see him again, so I had to ask that real quick.
Well, Gunner, Happy New Year to you. We appreciate the time.
Happy New Year to you guys as well, and thank you for having me on.